Picture this. You are getting dressed for a job interview, a wedding, or a formal dinner. You knot your tie, straighten your collar, and then reach for that small metallic clip or pin to anchor everything in place. Without thinking twice, you slide it onto the left side of your chest, somewhere between the third and fourth button. You didn't look it up. Nobody told you. It just felt right. But why the left side? Why not the right? Who decided that a small piece of metal needed a designated address on the human body? And did someone actually sit down one day and invent the tie pin? Or did it just quietly appear in the world of men's fashion and never leave? Today we are pulling back the lapel on one of the most overlooked accessories in the history of men's dress. Right here on Simple History of Things for You. To understand why the tie pin landed where it did, you first need to understand why it existed at all. The necktie as we know it today descends from a long line of neckcloths, cravats, and stocks that European men wore from the 17th century onward. These early neckwear styles were elaborate, often made from fine linen or silk, and required considerable effort to arrange properly. Keeping them in place through a full day of movement, meals, and activity was a genuine practical problem. By the 19th century, as the modern necktie began to take shape in Victorian England, the challenge remained. A silk tie hanging loosely from the collar had a tendency to swing forward over food, catch on objects, or simply fall out of alignment at the worst possible moment. Gentlemen needed a solution that was both functional and visually acceptable in polished company. The tie pin, a slender decorative spike pushed through the tie and secured to the shirt placket beneath, answered both requirements simultaneously. The man most consistently credited with popularizing the tie pin as a mainstream men's accessory is Beau Brummel, the influential British dandy and close associate of the Prince Regent who dominated London fashion in the early 1800s. Brummel was not an inventor in the mechanical sense. He was something more powerful in the world of fashion. A tastemaker whose every choice was studied, copied, and eventually standardized by the men who admired him. Brummel's insistence on precise, immaculate dress extended to every detail of the male silhouette, including the way neckwear sat against the shirt. He championed the use of decorative pins to anchor the cravat cleanly in place, and because Brummel set the standard for what elegant men wore, the practice spread rapidly through English society and from there into Europe and America. The pins themselves in this early period were genuinely precious objects, topped with pearls, gemstones, carved coral, or enamel miniatures. They functioned as wearable status symbols as much as practical fasteners. A man's tie pin communicated his wealth, his taste, and his social standing in a single glance. The accessory was so valued that tie pins were regularly given as gifts between men of rank, passed down through families, and listed as notable items in wills and estate inventories. So why the left side specifically? The answer draws from the same logic that governs many conventions in men's formal dress. The left side of the chest sits directly over the heart, a placement that across centuries of Western culture has carried associations of sincerity, loyalty, and personal honor. Military dress uniforms placed medals and decorations on the left breast for precisely this reason. The heart side was the side of significance. There is also a practical dimension that reinforces the symbolic one. The majority of men are right-handed. Reaching across the body with the dominant right hand to fasten or adjust a pin on the left side of the chest is a natural, comfortable motion. Doing the same on the right side requires an awkward inward bend of the wrist. Over time, as tailors and gentlemen's outfitters standardized their advice on correct dress, left side placement became the accepted instruction passed from valet to gentleman, from father to son, and eventually from fashion column to reader. By the late Victorian and Edwardian periods, the tie pin had evolved into a broader category that included the tie bar and the tie clip, flatter devices that clamped horizontally across the tie rather than piercing through it. The American inventor and businessman Jesse Langsdorff, who patented the modern bias-cut necktie construction in 1924, indirectly accelerated this shift. As ties became more standardized in width and construction, the accessories designed to hold them in place evolved accordingly. The tie bar offered the same anchoring function as the pin without risk of damage to finer silk fabrics, and its horizontal placement across the left chest quadrant continued the established convention. Through the mid-20th century, the tie clip became standard issue in both military and civilian professional dress. Photographs of American presidents, British prime ministers, and corporate executives from the 1940s through the 1970s show the accessory positioned consistently on the left, between the third and fourth shirt buttons, the placement so uniform it appeared almost regulated. Today, the tie pin and tie bar have cycled back into fashion after decades of dormancy, driven partly by a broader revival of interest in classic menswear and partly by a generation of dressers who discovered that the small details are often where personal style lives most vividly. The left side placement has never changed. It remains the default, the correct position according to every style guide, every tailor, and every gentleman's outfitter from London's Savile Row to Milan. And here is what that tells us. The most durable conventions in human dress are almost never purely arbitrary. They survive because they sit at the intersection of the practical and the symbolic, because they solve a real problem while simultaneously saying something about the person wearing them. The tie pin on the left side of the chest holds the tie in place and places it over the heart at the same time. Function and meaning, occupying exactly the same square inch of fabric. That is a difficult combination to argue with, which is probably why nobody ever has. Do you wear a tie pin or tie bar? And have you ever thought about which side you put it on? Share your answer in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. And if today's video added something to the way you see the clothes you wear every morning, make sure you like, subscribe, and stay with us here on Simple History of Things for You, where the smallest details always turn out to carry the biggest stories.